We're here to express some other perspective here. I think everybody here wants to see premium relief. We're very pleased that the governor was pushing for immediate premium relief instead of next year premium relief. We're glad that that's in here, but one-time premium relief should not be tied to permanent changes, many of them very harmful, none of them really vetted. Particularly, one strongest concern I and many others have is this idea that we're going to, after many, many years of staying away from this, just all of a sudden going to go and allow for-profit insurance companies into Minnesota. That was not vetted. I served on both the Health and Human Services and Finance Committee. We did not discuss that issue. It wasn't even, they took it out of the bill. It's not ready for prime time, no discussion. And these changes are going to affect consumers for permanently. They say they're helping patients be able to afford care this year, but what about next year? They say this is going to help. Look at how a for-profit insurance company works. There are two ways they can increase their profits, which is their goal. They are fiduciary responsibility, their shareholders, to increase profits. How do they do it? They either charge more in premiums or they pay fewer claims, both of which are harmful to patients, both of which are the thing they say they're trying to solve. None of this has been vetted. There are other problems with this that I don't think anybody's really taken a look at. We've got a number of nonprofit insurance plans in Minnesota holding large reserves, I think billion-dollar-plus reserves in some cases. That's public money. It came from their patients. It came from the taxpayers. Those billion-dollar reserves, how, if they convert to become for-profit, how is that handled? I think they say, oh, we don't worry about that now. Well, you fix these things before you address an issue like this. But the bottom line is, if the purpose of a for-profit insurance company is to make profits, the way they make their profit is to either charge more for premiums or decrease what they pay for. And bottom line is that's not what we want. That's the opposite thing. That's not the kind of competition to drive up prices. We want to drive down the cost of health care. They're not providing any health care. They're just providing more administrators to make the system more expensive. So we're very concerned about that provision.
And I would add, before Senator Lourey comes, that we are disappointed around the process. There were several rules that were broken along this journey. I would say that we didn't get really good fiscal notes on this issue along the way. So I'm not quite sure how Senator Rosen, who is not here today, but Senator Rosen and Senator Benson, who just talked to you, are going to run their committees as we walk through without getting good fiscal notes. I note that Senator Abler is here still today, and he had a provision around county-based purchasing that somehow did not make the bill as it came around. He added it in. There was this promise to kind of add it in. It just illustrates the problem. Commerce was canceled this week along with Senator Benson's committee. That's the time for what Senator Marty's talking about and Senator Lourey will talk about. That is the time for us to vet this process out. I'll note that United Healthcare, one of our the biggest company in Minnesota, pulled out the individual market all throughout the country. So I'm not sure how for-profit comes in and adds to competition where everywhere else in the country they have pulled out because they said that they couldn't work. We haven't had the opportunity to have that talk. Somehow we were saying we're going to do it in October, November, December. We get to January, we rush in, we rush a bill through, and then we kind of sit around, and then we rush it to the floor, and somehow that is the relief that they're looking for. So I just really am concerned. I understand the governor told leaders that he would sign the bill. However, the Minnesota Senate and members of it, I can't say that all DFL is, but there is enough consternation when we talked about it that says that we are very concerned on what this does moving forward for Minnesotans, primarily because we haven't had the opportunity to really vet these issues in a way that all of the stakeholders could get involved.
Well, and thank you for sticking around after the initial press conference. What's really disappointing about this, Senator Benson actually made several public statements that I appreciated about the work that we were doing together early in this process. And really critical to Senate File 1 was a process of starting to try to build trust. And I had a leap of faith. Senator Benson and I had a good trust relationship when the roles were reversed, and we were trying to continue that. There have been several broken rules and several broken promises as we've made it to this point. And what's really unfortunate is there was a bipartisan path to get premium relief done. We also accepted the continuity of care. The rest of these reforms need some more work, particularly for-profit insurance companies. For-profit insurance companies have been pulling out of the individual markets in every state across the country. That's not going to be their target. They're going to be targeting our public programs. They're going to be coming in and try to bleed profits off of our public programs, and we have several for-profit insurance companies sniffing around trying to lay the groundwork for that right now. And that would be an unintended consequence, one I spoke with Senator Benson about. She shared my concerns. We should take a look at this. The conversion issue that I think Senator Marty and Senator Hayden both mentioned, is one that really needs to be taken seriously. Assets of nonprofits are held in the public trust. They are for the benefit of the public and the public's health. And we have nothing in statute, despite statements made on the record in conference committee by conference committee members to the contrary. There is nothing in our statute that governs how a conversion from a nonprofit status to a for-profit status would be handled. And nonprofit companies would be able to run into a for-profit venture and take all of those public assets with them and turn them over to shareholders and stakeholders. That is not in the public interest. That is not something that is ready to go into Minnesota statute books in any way, shape, or form. Stop-loss changes, they say that these are for the benefit of the individual market. Stop-loss changes have almost nothing to do with the individual market. In fact, have a real threat to destabilize the small group market, a market that has actually become quite stable. So it's risky to be rushing these changes through without the vetting, and it's really disappointing that we've had, we started off trying to build trust, and I pledged and had a commitment that we could work on most every one of these issues in here and have bipartisan bills. I think we could have had a unanimous vote on Senate File 1, and I think we could have gotten to a point where we had a unanimous vote on a set of reforms that could have really worked to stabilize the individual market and been a real victory for the people of Minnesota. And instead, we have, a reckless set of changes that aren't ready for prime time, that were achieved by holding hostage the premium relief that people desperately need. I will say, back in January and February of last year, we saw this coming. Senator Skoye and I actually crafted an attempt to try to do a tax relief for people ineligible for the federal tax subsidies. As we saw Blue Cross pull out and the large increases, Governor Dayton in October and November and December, along with me and my colleagues, have been trying to get this done. This has been put off. It is now January 26th. There are 5 days left for people to make their choice. This is too little, too late, and held hostage for other reforms that are not ready for prime time.
Senator Marty, just real quickly, if all other states allow for-profit insurance companies, why not Minnesota? Why be an island? What are they doing wrong that we're doing right?
You ask people in any of those states, how many of them think Aetna, Anthem, Cigna, how many of them are doing a good job? How many of them are fair to their patients? How many of them are paying the bills they should pay? How many of them aren't overcharging? I think you'll find out that they're not saying these are our friends, they're the ones who come here. Take a public opinion poll on for-profit insurance companies. Their role is to maximize profits. The way they compete is to try and get more and pay less. And that's what they try and do, and that's the opposite of what we're trying to do for patients in Minnesota. We're trying to bring down the premiums and make sure the coverage is better. The bill what the House floor did to the bill, where they were saying earlier, we're going to take away with the coverage. We'll give you the cancer insurance filled with loopholes. That's not what we want, but clearly this is part of that. We're going to bring in these for-profit insurers, and they do not deliver health care. People who deliver health care are doctors and nurses. Insurance companies do not deliver health care. And they are coming in to take a profit out. That's a bad step. It's a step backwards, and as we've all said, it has not been vetted. It has not been vetted in any of the Senate committees. I don't know if the House had hearings, but I heard zero testimony on this.
Governor Dayton has criticized a number of these reforms that were put into the bill, but has said that he's willing to sign that despite the presence there to get premium relief for people. It sounds like you guys have looked at the same thing and come to a very different conclusion. Why are you not willing to vote for this, from what it sounds like, when it sounds like the governor and his staff called this a good bill yesterday.
Well, I think you just said two different things. You said that the governor said it wasn't a good bill, but he was going to sign it. And then you said the governor said it was a good bill. So I'm not quite sure what he said. What we know is in Minnesota Senate, most of us, a good number of us, have enough concerns about this bill where we feel like we can't vote for it. As a matter of fact, we feel like it should go back to the conference committee and get more work done. If we couldn't do it in the committee structure, we should do it in the conference committee and get a lot more work done on the bill. If the governor, he's the governor, and if he feels like that this is something that he has to do, we understand that. But we do need to make sure that the public, and that's our job, is to represent our constituents, and that the public understands very thoroughly what are the consequences and unintended consequences of this bill. And as Senator Lourey said, holding this bill hostage since the end of September with 5 days left to go, we don't think that that's a very good way to govern.
One more point. We're going to move to send it back. If we succeed at doing it, they take out that one provision, send it back, we could vote on it later today. There's no reason. It does not take a long time to strike a couple of sections of a bill. It does not take long. That's our biggest concern. If we do that, I'm planning to support the bill if they take out the for-profit insurance thing.
Oh, the other thing that I would say is that there is a concern, and I probably would be remiss, the minority leader talks a lot about this. We are very concerned that the budget, that the premium relief is coming out of the reserves. That we really think that we have a $1.4 billion surplus. We have a healthcare access fund. I don't know exactly where Senator Lourey might be on that, but there's other mechanisms to do it, and there is deep concern in our caucus as well about the funding mechanism.
One other piece that has had no hearings in the Senate at all, and I am worried about the funding mechanism as well. We do have $678 million left on the bottom line this year. That's almost twice. It's over twice what this bill costs. And, that would be a much better source of revenue just out of the general fund. But also this waiver of network adequacy going to a contested case hearing. I've never seen this language in the Senate, not once. And it really holds out false hope to rural providers who are upset about not being in networks. This is a very real issue and one that should be taken seriously, but it's holding out false hope. The contested case hearing locks these things up for over 6 months, at least, in a very administratively burdensome and cumbersome manner that is expensive for the agencies to administer and for the providers to actually state their case. And the patients are left holding the bag for that time when these aren't actually going to be in the networks until the end of this case, and then possible court, circuit court action after that. It's not really a workable solution. It's a real problem, but not really a workable solution, one that had zero conversation. And to this date, we're going to be taking this up on the Senate floor. Likely it will pass, is my expectation. We don't have a fiscal note. There is no fiscal note completed on this provision. And it is going to be, a significant amount of money and a real administratively burdensome process for rural providers that actually really do want to get in the networks. And if we wanted to get serious about that, we could have had some meaningful conversations. We had zero opportunity to do that.